Welcome back to Bourbon Hunter, the channel where we chase great bottles, break down bourbon myths, and occasionally make some questionable life choices, all in the name of whiskey research. Here, we're diving into the stories behind the bottles, the trends shaking up the bourbon world, and the pours that'll make you say, yep, that's going on the top shelf. So grab a glass, settle in, and let's hunt some flavor, because around here, the bourbon's bold, the jokes are bad, and the hunt is always on. Hey, bourbon hunters, welcome back. If you caught my last video, we dug into whether the bourbon market is crashing or just correcting. If you haven't seen it yet, go back, check it out. I break down what's really happening with prices, demand, and why some bottles are adjusting after the boom. There's also a list of suggestions for what to buy and what to avoid. Here in Southern Illinois, where I'm based, closer to Kentucky and St. Louis than Chicago, I've noticed something that no spreadsheet can fully capture. We've officially become a dead zone for allocated bottles. And we're not alone. Other markets that are farther from major metro areas have smaller populations or slower moving liquor accounts see the same thing. They all share a few traits: fewer high volume stores, slower turnover, and distributors that prioritize cities where trucks already run daily. Put simply, if you're outside a big metro in a smaller population center or not part of a chain with multiple locations, the odds of seeing allocated bourbon drop dramatically. And that's not because the stores aren't trying. It's because the system is built for volume, not enthusiasm. Let me tell you something most customers do not want to hear, but every liquor store owner already knows. They don't get to order Blantons. They don't get to request Weller. And they definitely don't get to decide when E.H. Taylor shows up. There is no secret menu. There is no call the distillery button. There's no clipboard in the back labeled good stuff for regulars. Those bottles are assigned. In a lot of towns, they're assigned zero. And how it actually works, the distributor decides how many allocated bottles a store gets based on how much of their entire portfolio that store moves. Not just bourbon, not just the stuff you want: vodka, flavored whiskey, ready to drink cocktails, bottom shelf mixers, the things you walk past and never buy. Every case of that matters more than you buying one unicorn bottle a year. Now let's talk math, because math doesn't care about your feelings. A big city store can move more cases in a week than a rural store moves in months. So when allocation time comes around, the city stores eat first. Always. That's not favoritism, that's volume. And here's the part nobody likes to admit: small stores can't play the allocation game the way big stores do. They can't buy 10 cases of slow moving vodka just to earn one hype bottle. They don't have the shelf space. They don't have the cash flow. And they don't have customers lining up to buy flavored whiskey nobody asked for. Big stores can bury that inventory. Small stores drown in it. So, before you walk into a rural or mom and pop store and ask, why don't you ever get the good stuff? This is why. It's not that they don't want it. It's not that they don't try. It's not that they're hiding bottles in the back. It's that the system wasn't built for small stores or small towns. Distillery allocation isn't random, and it sure as hell isn't fair the way most people think it is. It's a volume based system designed to move the most liquid the fastest in the biggest markets. And if you live outside those markets, welcome to the bourbon dead zone. Let's kill the biggest myth in bourbon right out the gate. Distilleries do not pick which liquor stores get allocated bottles. They're not sitting around a table saying, yeah, give Marion 2 Blantons, but screw Mount Vernon this year. That's not how this works. In most states, especially 3-tier and control states, distilleries sell to distributors, not to stores. The flow is simple: distillery, distributor, retailer, you. And that middle step, that's where the power lives. Once bottles leave the distillery, control is largely gone. The distillery might suggest, the distributor decides. So let's use Illinois, because Illinois is a perfect example. Illinois is a 3-tier state with very powerful distributors. Distilleries sell to licensed distributors. Stores don't get a vote, consumers don't get a vote, and your relationship with that store owner doesn't magically change that. Once those bottles hit the distributor's warehouse, they control the chessboard. And like any good chess player, they protect their kings. So who gets prioritized? Chicago Metro, suburban Cook, lake counties, college towns that move volume, high volume on premise accounts, which would be bars, steakhouses, cocktail programs. Why? Because that's where trucks already go constantly, orders are predictable, and bottles don't sit around collecting dust. Southern and rural Illinois, if there's anything left over, maybe. Not because people downstate don't drink bourbon, not because stores don't want it, but because the system is built to feed the biggest mouths first. That's the three-tier system in action. You're not being ignored, you're just not the priority. So let's break down how bourbon allocation really works, because it's not about vibes, loyalty, or how badly you want that bottle. Allocation isn't a game of luck or charm. It starts with cold, hard, historical sales data. Distilleries look at one thing first: how much of their entire portfolio a distributor moves. And I don't just mean the rare unicorn bottles everyone screenshots and posts online. I mean the full spectrum: Buffalo Trace by pallet, Woodford by the case, Jim Beam by the truckload. Every flavored, low margin, slow moving bottle that sits on the shelf and gets ignored. Those boring bottles, that's the toll you pay to even qualify for the good stuff. Without that baseline volume, the unicorns never make it your way. So now let's zoom out, because this is where rural markets get the short end of the stick. From a distributor's perspective, one solid Chicago account can move more bourbon in a single week than an entire rural county moves in months. That's not hype, that's a spreadsheet. So when allocation time rolls around, Chicago eats first, second, and usually third. Why? Because that's where trucks already roll every day, orders are large and predictable, product moves fast without babysitting, there are no phone calls, no begging, no dusty shelves. Meanwhile, smaller towns like Marion, the outskirts of Carbondale, Harrisburg, Mount Vernon, and other river towns see little to no Blantons, E.H. Taylor, Stagg, Weller. Not because nobody wants it, but because the math doesn't justify sending it. And here's the part the collectors hate. If distributor A sells 10 times more of a brand than distributor B, distributor A gets way more allocated bottles. Not a little more, a lot more. That's the system. So the big takeaway: allocation rewards volume, not enthusiasm. You can hunt every day, know the release schedule by heart, and beg politely every Friday. If your market doesn't move liquid, the bottles aren't coming. Distributors prioritize a very specific type of account. One, stores that buy everything, not just the hype bottles. If a store only wants Blanton's, Weller, and E.H. Taylor, but refuses Fireball, vodka, flavored whiskey, or shelfers, they're invisible. Two, chains and high volume accounts, more locations, bigger orders, predictable revenue. Three, accounts that don't complain, don't delay payment, and don't cherry pick. Complaining doesn't get you bottles. Slow payment doesn't get you bottles. Refusing the boring products guarantees you get nothing. Yes, you've heard the line. You've got to buy Fireball or Wheatley to get one allocated bottle. That's not a rumor or a conspiracy. It's standard leverage practice, not bribery. Illinois is a textbook example of how allocation favors certain markets over others. Distributors here typically allocate based on prior year total dollars spent, number of locations, compliance and payment history, and strength of relationships. There is no rule that says every county gets a few bottles. None. Zero. So yes, an entire county getting 0 Blantons, 0 Weller, 0 Stagg is totally legal, totally normal, and absolutely frustrating. That's why some stores always seem stacked while others never see a thing. It's not forgetfulness, it's just the numbers. If your store didn't rank high enough in the distributor's eyes, the bottles are not coming your way. The takeaway so far: allocation starts with volume, not desire. Distributors hold the real power. If you want allocated bottles, your market has to move liquid consistently. Now, this is the part that hurts feelings. Market size matters more than passion. You can have the most knowledgeable bourbon drinkers on earth, but if there aren't enough of them, the bottles still aren't coming. Urban and high population areas win because they check every box distributors care about: more accounts, faster turnover, higher total dollar sales, and easier logistics. It's not romance, it's routing. A rural county might have incredible bourbon drinkers, people who know mash bills, proof points, and release schedules, but there are fewer of them. So, from a distillery's point of view, 1,000 bottles dropped in Chicago are gone in days. 50 bottles dropped in a rural market might sit for weeks. And distilleries don't get bonus points for patience. They send product where it moves the fastest. Now, let's talk about the most misunderstood phrase in bourbon: buy the junk to get the good stuff. This hits rural stores harder than anyone. Rural stores have limited shelf space, slower cash flow, and customers who absolutely refuse to buy cases of low end vodka or neon colored flavored whiskey. And honestly, I don't blame them. But distributors still expect full portfolio buys, large case commitments, consistent volume across categories. Urban chains can absorb that pain. They can hide the slow movers across 10 locations. They can sit on inventory. They can bury losses until the next allocation wave. Mom and pop stores can't. One bad pallet can wreck their month. So what happens? They get skipped. Not punished, not blacklisted, just skipped. Because the system rewards scale, not enthusiasm. And in bourbon, enthusiasm doesn't pay the freight. Let's also talk about why borrowers keep beating mom and pop stores and why collectors hate this part the most. Bars move bottles faster. They provide brand visibility, and they're more profitable long term than collectors will ever be. A dusty bottle sitting on a retail shelf does nothing for a brand. A bottle being poured at a busy bar, that's marketing. That's revenue. That's a repeat customer ordering the same brand next week. Now, add Midwest drinking culture into the mix, and this is where collectors really start losing ground. The Midwest drinks more beer, more vodka, more Canadian whiskey. There are fewer cocktail forward bourbon bars compared to coastal markets. That means less premium bourbon moved per capita. And distributors don't follow hype, they follow revenue. Collectors are loud, collectors comment, collectors argue online, but collectors don't move pallets. Bars do. Let me put it in real terms. A Chicago steakhouse orders every week, pours allocated bourbon at $25 to $40 a pour, and puts that brand in front of hundreds of customers a month. A rural liquor store might sell one allocated bottle every few months, often to someone who's flipping it or hoarding it. From a brand standpoint, that's not a hard decision. And that's why bars get priority over retail, not because collectors don't matter, but because collectors don't pay the bills. As if distilleries and distributors weren't enough, some states add a whole extra boss level. State laws can make allocation either slightly better or a whole lot worse. Control states and quota states are where things get really weird. In these states, alcohol doesn't just flow through distributors, it flows through state agencies. That means state boards decide who gets what. State formulas decide how much goes where, and politics, population, and revenue all get a vote. And let me spoil the ending for you. Rural areas usually lose again. A lot of these systems use formulas based on population size, prior year sales, tax revenue, number of licensed accounts, which sounds fair until you realize it automatically favors big cities and tourist areas. So, if a state gets a small number of allocated bottles, the biggest metro gets the biggest slice. The second biggest metro gets what's left. And everyone else gets vibes and disappointment. Some states try to spread bottles evenly. They'll send one or two bottles to every county, every store, or every region. That sounds nice. But here's the catch: one bottle doesn't fix a dead zone, it just creates a line. Most states don't even do that. Most follow the money. If a county doesn't generate tax revenue, move volume, or have political weight, it gets skipped. And before anyone says it, no, this isn't a conspiracy, it's bureaucracy. State agencies are designed to maximize revenue, minimize complaints, and keep supply moving. Fairness to collectors doesn't crack the top 10. So when you hear, my state is a control state, why can't they just spread it out? Now you know. The law didn't make bourbon fair, it just made it manageable. Now, let's talk about the part that makes everyone mad. Why prices stay high even when demand cools. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Distributors and retailers have long memories. They remember the scarcity years, the panic buying, the overnight sellouts, and the secondary market prices everyone pretended not to know about. And they learned a lesson from that era. These bottles are leverage. So even when demand cools, pricing doesn't drop overnight. Why? Because pricing lags reality, sometimes by months, sometimes by years, especially in markets that barely see allocation. Now let's talk about rural Illinois, because this is where it gets brutal. In rural areas, supply is basically near zero. So when an allocated bottle does show up, it gets priced like a museum piece, not because a store owner is greedy, but because they don't know if they'll ever see another one. That bottle might be the only Blantons, Weller, or Stag they get all year. So they hedge. They price it like, this might be my last one. This has to make sense. I can't price this like Chicago. And here's another piece nobody likes to admit. Retailers price bottles based on what customers already expect to pay online. Secondary market pricing train people, collectors included, what these bottles are worth. Stores didn't create that expectation. They reacted to it. Scarcity creates the price, not the store. When supply is thin, price fills the gap. So if you're mad at your local store's price, understand this. They're not pricing for today's demand. They're pricing for the next 3 years of not getting that bottle again. And here's the blunt truth. And this part is great for my channel because it upsets people and explains reality. Allocation isn't about fairness. It's not about loyalty, and it's definitely not about who deserves the bottles. Allocation is about who moves the most liquid, the fastest, and with the least friction. That's it. And here's the uncomfortable truth for Illinois bourbon hunters. You're not competing with your neighbor. You're not competing with the guy who got the last Blantons. You're competing with Chicago's total liquor spend. And you will lose that fight every single time. Illinois bourbon dead zones exist because distributors send bottles where trucks already go every day. And that isn't rural Illinois. Now, before you rage quit and drive 3 hours north, let me tell you how to actually help your local store get better bourbon. Because yelling doesn't move allocation, spending does. First, buy the regular stuff locally, not just the unicorns. Every bottle of Buffalo Trace, Woodford, Makers, or Wild Turkey your store moves helps their numbers with the distributor. Those bottles matter more than the one hype bottle you'll never see. Second, be consistent. One big purchase once a year doesn't move the needle. Regular monthly spending does. Distributors look at trends, not gestures. Third, don't ask stores to hold bottles they don't have. Distributors track favoritism complaints. That hurts small stores way more than you think. Fourth, support local bars and restaurants that carry allocated bourbon. When they move pours, the whole area looks stronger on paper. That helps retail too, even if you don't see it right away. And last, this one matters. Be patient. When a store's numbers improve, allocations follow. Slowly, quietly, without announcement. If you want better bourbon in your town, don't abandon your store. Build it up. All right, that's going to do it for this one. We talked about what keeps bourbon collectors up at night, how distillery allocations actually flow. Spoiler, it's not fair, and it's definitely not random. And why rural markets like ours tend to get treated like the redheaded stepchild of the bourbon world. But here's the takeaway. Being in a so-called dead zone doesn't mean you're powerless. Support the right stores. Buy consistently. Stop chasing every shiny bottle and slowly, painfully build a track record that distributors can't ignore. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was a decent allocation map. If you missed the last episode, go back and watch. Is the bourbon market crashing, or is this just a correction? That video sets the stage for why allocations are shifting, why hype bottles are wobbling, and why some of you are suddenly seeing dust where chaos used to be. As always, I'm not here to sell you a dream. I'm here to help you hunt smarter, drink better, and maybe stress a little less over brown liquid in a glass bottle. Like, subscribe, share this with your favorite frustrated bourbon buddy, and remember, you don't need every bottle. You just need the right ones. I'm Bourbon Hunter, and yes, I know I have a problem. And that's another pour down. If you enjoyed hanging out in the hunt today, don't leave me standing here like an empty bottle on a Sunday morning. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment about what I should track down next. Remember, bourbon may age gracefully, but my YouTube channel only grows if you feed it. I'll see you in the next hunt. Cheers, bourbon hunters.